Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Repeat Ron, and today we're going to be doing the Survivalist weapon bracket fight, which is every weapon in the game versus one another. I think I have them all set up now. This is a huge list, and we're going to be talking very briefly about each of these, so I'm not going to be going into huge depth as to why I would take one over the other. So our very first fight is the M4 versus the Static Striker. Static Striker is way more, you get melee expert with them, that's a bonus. You can also put EMP on them. The M4 does more damage, has good range, has decent reload speed. I would go with the M4 over the Static Strikers. SWAT Nail Gun versus the Cryo Bow. The Cryo Bow does do more damage per shot, has a spike on it, which is nice. It comes in at somewhat of an awkward weight. I think I'd rather go with the Nail Gun over the Cryo Bow. I think it does jobs a little bit better than it. Double Barrel or the Cock and Burn. Cock and Burn is pretty bad on Survivalist because you don't get any bonus advantage with it, so the Double Barrel wins here. Tesla Launcher versus the Blunderbuss. Tesla Launcher is a little bit of an awkward weapon, although it does do okay damage per shot. It does count as microwave damage, and it can use EMPs, which are good. Blunderbuss does more damage per shot, counts as explosions, counts as shotgun. I think I'd rather go with the Blunderbuss over the Tesla Launcher. We are also going to be ranking these based just solely on how good they are as weapons, not necessarily how good they are on tools, because otherwise certain medic weapons might score really high, like the medic SMG or medic pistol. The Doomstick or the M14. Both these weapons are very good on Survivalist. Both these weapons work pretty well with any loadout because you have the extra weight for it. You will do more damage faster with the Doomstick. You will do better at longer ranges with the M14, and you have more flexibility with the M14. I would still give this one to the Doomstick, though. Doomstick hits pretty hard, and you can take good secondaries with it. Hemoclobber or Killerwatt. Hemoclobber, you get melee expert. You can also heal yourself with it and heal allies, which we're not going to be factoring that much. It's more lightweight than the Killerwatt. Killerwatt counts as microwave damage as well as EMP damage, which is also pretty useful. For this one, if I only had one, I'd probably pick the Killerwatt over it as a weapon. Minigun or the Fire Axe. Minigun weighs a lot, but Survivalists can get away with it. It does pretty good damage towards all enemies, but has a lower magazine size as opposed to when you use it on commando. Fire Axe hits pretty hard, scales decently well with upgrades, and can be used with melee expert. I would rather go with the Fire Axe than the minigun here. 2011s or M32 grenade launcher. 2011s do pretty high damage per second, so does the M32 grenade launcher. You get more AoE damage with the grenade launcher. It also works against flesh pounds pretty well. The 2011s don't fit Survivalist's playstyle all that great. I'd give this one to the M32. C4, the Mine Reconstructor. Mine Reconstructor you can heal allies with, you can poison enemies over time with. It does weigh more than C4, and C4 is generally going to be a better option if you want to take this with other weapons than the Mine Reconstructor, so I'd give this one to C4. Rhinos or the Blast Brawlers. Both these weapons act somewhat like shotguns. The Rhinos are more lightweight than the Blast Brawlers, but you do get bonus movement speed with the Blast Brawlers. Rhinos will do more damage and more damage per second. They also have much easier ways of firing them than the Blast Brawlers. Blast Brawlers are kind of weird, but I think that they are probably a better weapon because you do get melee expert and you can block and parry with them. Ion Thruster or Medic SMG. Medic SMG is lighter. Ion Thruster will hit harder. You can block and parry with the Ion Thruster. I'd give this one to the Ion Thruster for a weapon. Road Redeemer or the Buckshots. Both these weapons work pretty well on Survivalist. You can block and parry with the Road Redeemer as well as get bonus movement speed. Buckshots make good early game weapons against most enemies. This one I think I'd give to the Road Redeemer over the Buckshots since the Buckshots don't scale that well with upgrades. The FAMAS Master Key or the Katana. The FAMAS Master Key counts as a cross perk weapon, so you can use either level 5 skill with it and get faster reloads, which is nice. It does okay damage with its shotgun and with its assault rifle. The Katana does probably better damage per second and more consistent damage than the FAMAS will, at least at close range. You do also get bonus movement speed with the Katana, and it is more lightweight. I think I'd pick the Katana in this instance. The M99 Sniper Rifle or the Incendiary Rifle. Survivalist doesn't get that much of a bonus with Firebug weapons, so the M99 is kind of the obvious choice here, and with faster reload speed and higher damage, it is pretty nice. Even with its high weight, with Survivalist, you can still take it with a lot of other weapons. The FAL or the MAC-10. MAC-10 is more lightweight, FAL will hit harder. FAL is a cross-perk weapon with Commando and Sharpshooter, so you can use either level 5 with it, and I'd pick the FAL because of that. The Kroval or the Glock 18 with the Riot Shield. Both these weapons can block and parry. The Glock 18 with the Riot Shield is much more heavy than the Kroval. Kroval actually scales quite well with upgrades. The Glock 18 doesn't scale as well and comes in at a higher weight. For this one, I think I'd give it more to the Riot Shield because it's a better defensive weapon than the Kroval, but the Kroval is a pretty good contender here. Grenade Pistol or the MKB-42. The grenade pistol counts as a cross perk weapon for gunslinger and for demo, so you get that advantage with it. It does more damage per shot. You also get the explosion, and the explosion can't hurt you, which is a bonus, and it's more lightweight than the MKB, as well as it scales better than the MKB. I would go with the grenade pistol over the MKB. Beluga Beat or the Pump Shotgun. Pump Shotgun's kind of slow. Beluga Beat is pretty quick. Beluga Beat can also bully bosses. I'd pick the Beluga Beat. The Scar or the Insurgent. Scar you get a good amount of shots for. It does good damage per second. It has a decent sight. Kind of a low magazine though. Insurgent does high damage, can apply the EMP effect, and you can heal allies with it, as well as your healing darts do hurt enemies and can punch through them to heal allies. I would go with the Insurgent over the Scar here. Spitfires or the Kaboom Stick. I would say this is an easy win for the Kaboom Stick. It does much more damage and it's more flexible than the Spitfires, even though Spitfires are a cross perk weapon between Gunslinger and Sharpshooter. I would still take the Kaboom Stick over it. The Husk Cannon or the P90. P90 is more lightweight. P90 is really good at shooting small enemies. It has a large magazine and it has low recoil. Husk Cannon does high damage and does count as a demo weapon, so you do get a faster reload with it. Not so much damage over time with its fire, but decent damage per shot, and you can charge it up and deal more damage. I would go with the Husk Cannon over the P90 here for a primary weapon, although the P90 is a really good secondary. Freeze Thrower or Eviscerator, you can freeze enemies with the Freeze Thrower. You can kind of use it like a shotgun, which is handy. The Eviscerator counts towards Melee Expert, and it is a ranged melee weapon that can also block and parry. I would go with the Eviscerator. The Trench Gun or the Dragon's Breath versus the Seeker 6. Seeker 6 has some problems on a lot of maps because the maps just are so much shorter, although it does do good damage, and it can be a pretty good weapon overall on longer maps. The Trench Gun is cheaper, it weighs less, it does good damage per shot, and does decent damage over time, even though the reload speed is a little bit slower. I think I'd still give it to the Trench Gun for its flexibility, though. Mosin or Flamethrower. Flamethrower doesn't do that well on Survivalist because you don't get that much of a bonus with the fire. It does decently well against small enemies, but the Mosin is going to be the better choice here for its higher damage and the fact that you can block and parry with it, and it's equal weight. Winchester or the MP5. MP5 does pretty low damage, but it can work well against small enemies. Winchester scales really well and does well against everything, as well as it's lightweight. So Winchester wins. Medic AR versus the MP7. Both these weapons do well against small enemies. The MP7 does way less. MP7 has arguably nicer sights, although they're both good. The Medic AR does decent damage. I think the MP7 can out-damage it with full upgrades, and if we're just looking at these as weapons, I think the MP7 is a better choice than the Medic AR is. HZ-12 or 500 Magnums. HZ-12 is a really strong weapon right now. It holds a good amount of shots in its clip. It isn't as strong on Survivalist as it is on Support, but it's still a pretty good weapon early on. 500 Magnums are also really good as they count as cross-perk weapons with Sharpshooter and Gunslinger, so you can take either level 5, and you have quite a few options with them, at least if you're just taking one. If you're taking two, then it's strictly Gunslinger. 500 Magnums are going to be better at longer ranges. Both these weapons do high damage and pretty good damage per second, but I would give this one to the 500 Magnum. Bullpup or the RPG. RPG wins here for its just sheer raw damage. The Bullpup isn't a bad option, but it doesn't really compete with the RPG. Gravity Imploder or the Arc Generator, both these weapons do well. The Gravity Imploder is very hard to hurt yourself with. It can also use its secondary fire to kind of knock enemies around and suck them in, which is good. The Arc Generator does pretty good damage with its primary fire and extremely high damage with its secondary fire if you can hit enemies with it. It's incredibly strong in hallways, and both these weapons weigh about the same. I'd give this one to the Arc Generator because the EMP status of the lightning, as well as the bonus damage the lightning does to so many enemies. The Winter Bites or the Medic Shotgun. Medic Shotgun's going to do more damage. Both these weapons do reasonably well at long range. The Winter Bites scale better than the Medic Shotgun does, I believe, although the Medic Shotgun still will do more damage. The Winter Bites also count somewhat as explosive damage because of the way that their projectiles work, which is a little bit awkward in all honesty for Survivalist. I think the Medic Shotgun wins here. The AR-15 or the Seal Squeal? Alright, well the Seal Squeal wins here because it's a better overall weapon. The AR-15 on Survivalist is pretty weak. Low magazine, 3-round burst, or semi-auto with a low rate of fire and bad iron sights. It does scale well with upgrades, but the Seal Squeal does much more damage, scales better with upgrades, and the Seal Squeal is better against just all the Zeds, including bosses. The Heel Thrower or the Desert Eagle? The Heel Thrower is very awkward on Survivalist. It doesn't benefit that much because you can't give bonus buffs to allies, so you're just spraying gas at them, which can work against small enemies, but it's very awkward for its weight. Deagles hit hard and work well with pretty much any loadout, even if you just want to take one of them. Alright, well, we're through round one on the left-hand side. So, We have the M4 or the nail gun. I would pick the M4 here for more damage per shot. Double barrel or the blunderbuss. I would give this one to the double barrel. The double barrel has high damage, it's low weight, and it has good scaling. A little bit better than the blunderbuss, as well as you get bonus mobility with it. The doomstick or the kilowatt. I would give this one to the doomstick. Doomstick has higher damage than the kilowatt. Both of them are a similar weight. Even though the doomstick is more specialized and the kilowatt is a more general purpose weapon, I think I would still give it to the doomstick. Fire axe or the M32, I would give this one to the fire axe, the bonus mobility as well as it hits decently hard. C4 or the blast brawlers, I would give this one to the blast brawlers because you do get bonus mobility with them. They make as a better primary weapon than the C4 does. C4 is a really awkward primary weapon. Works really good as a secondary weapon though. Ion thruster or road redeemer, the ion thruster is just all around better than the road redeemer, so ion thruster wins here. The katana or the M99. The katana is a pretty decent weapon overall, but I would still give it to the M99 for its sheer amount of damage and the fact that you get faster reloads with the M99. FAL or the Glock 18 with a shield, I would give this one to the FAL. It's more flexible and less weight. The grenade pistol or the Blugabeat, I think I'd give this one to the Blugabeat, although they're both pretty comparable. They're both pretty good weapons on Survivalist. Beluga Beat is just better at bullying bosses. The Insurgent or the Kaboom Stick. I would give this one to the Kaboom Stick. It's more lightweight, it fits better with a lot more loadouts, and it hits harder than the Insurgent does, although the Insurgent is good for healing allies. The Husk Cannon or the Eviscerator. I would give this one to the Eviscerator for its extra block and parry abilities, as well as its extra movement speed. The Dragon's Breath or the Mosin. I would give this one to the Mosin. Mosin is generally a better weapon at longer ranges, although the Trench Gun can be pretty good at longer ranges. It still is somewhat slow to fire, somewhat slow to reload. The Mosin isn't particularly fast to fire or fast to reload. Well, it is compared to other games' Mosins, but it does hit pretty hard, and you can block and parry with it as well as stab with it. Although the Mosin does not count as a melee weapon, so you don't trigger melee expert here. Winchester or the MP7, I would give this one to the Winchester. It's a cross perk weapon. They both weigh the same weight, so they both scale the same in weight when they upgrade. And the Winchester scales much higher than the MP7 does. 500 Magnums or the RPG, this one's a difficult one. RPG is definitely going to hit harder. 500 Magnums or more flexible. I think I'd give this one to the RPG. It hits pretty hard, and that's really all it needs to do. Arc Generator or the Medic Shotgun, I think I'd give this one to the Arc Generator. It works as a better weapon than the Medic Shotgun does as a weapon. Medic Shotgun is really good as a secondary, though, to heal allies with. Seal Squeal or Desert Eagle, I think I would give this one to the Seal Squeal. The Seal Squeal generally helps out Survivalist a little bit more because you can have larger explosion radiuses with it, which the Seal Squeal definitely benefits from, and it will do more damage per shot, although the Deagles will do more damage per second. And the Deagles are a really good choice on Survivalist too. Alright, now we're getting to all the good weapons on Survivalist. The M4, the double barrel. The M4 has longer range and higher damage per second than the double barrel will. Double barrel has more mobility and is more lightweight though. I think for this one I would give it as a weapon to the double barrel just because of its extra mobility. Although the M4 is really strong too. Doomstick or the Fire Axe. I would give this one to the Doomstick for higher damage. And that's really about it. The Fire Axe would make a great secondary, though. More mobility, high damage with it, and you can block and parry with it. All great things. Blast Brawlers or Ion Thruster. I think I'd give this one to the Ion Thruster because it hits a bit harder than the Blast Brawlers, although the Blast Brawlers do give you a ranged option. The M99 Sniper Rifle or the FAL. I think I'd give this one to the FAL. It has more flexibility. It doesn't weigh as much, so that's all around a good thing. And it's a cross-perk weapon, so FAL wins here. Beluga Beat or Kaboom Stick. Kaboom Stick, it hits harder, although the Beluga Beat is good for bullying bosses, and both these in combination can really bully most bosses. Eviscerator or the Mosin. Both these are pretty good weapons. Both of them can be used as melee weapons, although the Mosin doesn't count as one, so Melee Expert doesn't work there. You can block and parry with both of them. Both these hit really hard. I think the Mosin actually hits harder than the Eviscerator does. The Mosin is also more lightweight. I think I'd go with the Mosin here over the Eviscerator. A Winchester or the RPG, another tough matchup. The Winchester does scale really well with upgrades, and a fully upgraded Winchester is pretty comparable to a fully upgraded RPG, at least in terms of damage and damage per second they can do. RPG is still going to hit harder. RPG is pretty good against most large enemies and can deal with crowds decently well as long as you have space. Winchester can be a little bit slow to reload. Actually, both these weapons are a little bit slow to reload. I think I'd give this one to the RPG. Although the Winchester would make a really good secondary to the RPG. Arc Generator or Seal Squeal. Both these weapons do well, but I think I would give this one to the Arc Generator. Its lightning balls do really high damage towards pretty much any enemy, and especially towards bosses. Seal Squeal is a very good option, though, too, for dealing with crowds and large enemies and bosses. Double Barrel or the Doomstick. Boomstick is more lightweight. Both these do good damage per shot. Both these do really high damage per burst. Both of them give you extra mobility. I would probably give this one to the Double Barrel, thanks to its lower weight and comparable damage per shot. Ion Thruster or FAL, both these are pretty good weapons. The Ion Thruster can do high damage per hit. The Ion Thruster also has its special ability, and you can block and parry with it, as well as get bonus mobility. The FAL counts as a crossbow weapon and does well in pretty much every situation. I think for this one, I would give it... honestly, this one's kind of hard to pick. I think I'd give it to the FAL for its flexibility, a little bit over the Ion Thruster, but just a little bit. Kaboom Stick or Mosin, I'd give this one to the Kaboom Stick. I think that it's a better overall weapon. You get bonus mobility with it. You do more damage than the Mosin does. The only thing that the Mosin can... Well, the Mosin can outrange the Kaboom Stick pretty easily, and it can block and parry, which is nice. But I think I'd still go with the Kaboom Stick for its lighter weight and more flexibility. Ooh, the RPG or the Arc Generator. These are really good weapons. Both these work really well against large Zeds. Both of them work well against crowds. Both of them work really well against all the bosses. I would say the Arc Generator is a little bit better here because it works a little bit better against crowds and a little bit better against bosses, but the RPG is a very good option too. I think they both weigh the same too. The Double Barrel or the FAL. Double Barrel is more lightweight. Double Barrel gives you bonus mobility, although the FAL gives you more flexibility, so you can take more weapons with it. FAL can do potentially more damage per second, depends on how close enemies are. It will definitely beat the Double Barrel in long range. For this one, it's honestly pretty close. I think I'd give this one to the FAL, though, although I use both these weapons pretty frequently with Survivalist. Kaboom Stick or the Arc Generator. Both these are very powerful weapons and work really well in combination. The Arc Generator will do more damage towards bosses. It can do more damage towards crowds, although the Kaboom Stick could also beat it in crowd damage because of just its big explosion radius. Kaboom Stick you can't hurt yourself with compared to other explosives, which is a pretty big bonus, and you do get bonus mobility for it. It also weighs less. I think I'm inclined to take the Kaboom Stick here over the Arc Generator, but that one's really close. And then our final matchup on this side is the FAL or the Kaboom Stick. FAL is a cross-perk weapon, so you do get a lot of flexibility with it. It will outrange the Kaboom Stick. It definitely won't outdamage the Kaboom Stick, and you get bonus mobility with the Kaboom Stick. You also can't hurt yourself. Kaboom Stick is lighter too, so you get more options with it. I'm inclined to pick the Kaboom Stick here, even though the FAL is a great weapon on Survivalist. Alright, now we're moving on to the right side. Glock 18 versus Medic Pistol. I would pick the Glock 18 here as a weapon. The Medic Pistol makes a great backup weapon or a whatever weight you have left weapon. That way you can heal allies with it, but that's mostly what it's going to be for. It does scale well with upgrades though, so if you want to throw upgrades into it, it actually does benefit from them. Glock 18s will do more damage though, and one Glock 18 on Survivalist is pretty good. 1911 or 501. Neither of these weapons benefit Survivalist a whole lot. I would say the 501 is better, and I would pick that because you have the healing grenades from it, but that's more, even as a weapon, I think it's better than 1911 just for dealing with crowds. Crossbow or Tommy Gun? Crossbow has much higher damage than the Tommy Gun. Both these cost about the same. The crossbow you can have infinite ammo for, and the crossbow hits really hard. Tommy Gun honestly isn't that great with Survivalist. It does okay because it is a submachine gun. It has a large magazine, so you can kill small enemies with it, and it's not going to be a bad choice, but I think the crossbow is a better choice. 1858 revolver or the vampire. So the 1858 revolver does count as a cross-perk weapon between gunslinger and sharpshooter, so you do get a level 5 advantage with that. Vampire is very awkward on Survivalist, I've found. It doesn't benefit the most from being able to suck blood out of enemies. I think I'd give this one to the 1858 just because the vampire is such an awkward weapon to use on Survivalist. It's a good weapon to use on Medic, but on Survivalist it's kind of weird. Pulverizer or Hemogoblin? I think I'd give this one to the Pulverizer. You can have faster reloads with this, you can have larger explosion radius with it, and you do get bonus mobility with the melee expert, as well as you can't hurt yourself with the Pulverizer, which is great. The Hemogoblin isn't a bad choice because you can heal allies and you can drain blood from enemies, which will do damage over time, as well as apply the effects to them. So the Hemogoblin wouldn't be a bad choice, but I think the Pulverizer wins here. The Scorcher versus the AA-12. The Scorcher is a very awkward weapon to take with Survivalist, as you don't really get any benefits from it. The AA-12 is a pretty solid weapon, and I would give it to the AA-12 over the Scorcher. A Nail Gun or the Centerfire. Both these weapons are good. Both of them are a very strong tier 2 option. The nail gun will do more damage per shot, assuming you hit with all the nails. It is really cheap ammunition too. The center fire hits very hard, scales really well with upgrades. The nail gun actually scales really well with upgrades too. I think I'd be more inclined to give this one to the center fire though, as it fits into a lot of loadouts really well. It also counts as a cross-perk weapon between gunslinger and sharpshooter, so you get more options with it too. The AK-12 or the Helios rifle. This one's kind of a weird one because neither one of these weapons benefits Survivalist a whole lot. The Helios rifle does microwave damage, which is good, but you don't get any bonus effects from it. You don't get any bonus fire damage, and nor do you get any bonus reload speed or clip size with the Helios rifle, which kind of hurts it. The AK, you can at least get faster reloads with it. It does decent damage per shot. It does way less than the Helios rifle, and with its secondary fire, you can fire in 3-round bursts pretty quick. I think I'd pick the Helios rifle over the AK with Survivalist, even though neither one of them are fantastic. The Thermite Bore or the Stoner, again, another two weapons that aren't really that great with Survivalist. Neither one of these benefit all that much from any of Survivalist's abilities. I mean, the explosion radius helps a little bit with the Thermite Bore, but even then, not so much. The Thermite Bore doesn't get any bonus reload speed. The Stoner does, but it's not that big a deal because you're usually reload canceling with the Stoner. Stoner can do well for killing small enemies, but not that great against big enemies. Thermite Bore is better for that. I think I'd give this one to the Thermite Bore. The Chris or the Railgun. Railgun does higher damage. Railgun weighs more. Chris can do more damage per second, at least to small enemies, and it has a pretty okay magazine size. I think I'd give this one to the Railgun for its higher damage, although the Chris is not a bad secondary to be taking. You can even take it with the Railgun if you want. Zweihander or the M79 grenade launcher. Zweihander will hit harder, I believe, at least with melee expert you spamming heavy attacks than the grenade launcher will. Grenade launcher has a pretty big explosion radius. Both these weapons weigh about the same. I think I'd give this one to the Zweihander. Block, parry, and bonus movement speed kind of push it above the grenade launcher. The UMP or the Frostfang. The Frostfang I would say wins here because it's a melee weapon. You can freeze enemies with it. You can also reload it faster because it counts as a support weapon, and it also doesn't weigh that much. The UMP does decent damage and can kill small enemies pretty quickly, but I don't think it competes with the Frostfang. The Bastion or the Microwave Gun. Two other weapons that don't work incredibly well on Survivalist. You do get the shield with the Bastion. It does do decent damage per shot. It's effectively the same as the Stoner in every way except for that it does have a shield and it weighs a little bit less, which is a bonus. The Microwave Gun really you don't get any benefits from with Survivalist because microwave damage is nice and the explosion damage can kind of help. I don't know if this counts for explosion radius though with its secondary fire. It does weigh a lot though and it doesn't benefit from most of your things, so I'd pick the Bastion here. The Battle Axe or the M16. The Battle Axe will hit harder than the M16 unless you're counting the grenade, in which case I think the M16 can hit harder. The M16 is going to be better at range. The M16 weighs less. The M16 is also a cross-perk weapon with Commando and with Demo, so you can take either level 5 with it and it is a more flexible weapon. I think I'd give this one to the M16 because I rarely find myself taking the Battle Axe. There's better melee weapons to be taking. And then we have all of our other weapons that are kind of moving on because some of our brackets are sort of weird. So Glock 18 versus the 501 medic rifle. I think I'd give this one to the Glock 18. Glock 18 will do more damage per second and be a little bit better overall. I'm also not factoring in the healing grenades all that much for utility. The crossbow, the 1858, I'd give this one to the crossbow. Higher damage, although the 1858 makes a fantastic backup weapon or a weapon you find on the ground, because it does count for 2 of your perks, so crossbow wins here. Pulverizer or AA-12, this one's actually really difficult. I like taking both these weapons. Pulverizer gets a lot of benefits from Survivalist in particular. The AA-12 also gets a lot of benefits because you can take other weapons with it because you have extra weight. You can potentially do better against large Zeds, although both these weapons work really well against large and small Zeds. I think I would give this one to... This one's actually really difficult. I think I would give this one to the AA-12, but just barely. The Pulverizer is a really good choice for Survivalist, though. Centerfire Helios Rifle. This one's an easy win for the Centerfire. It's probably a better overall option. You get more flexibility with it, both in its weight and it counting for both level 5 perks. And it also hits really hard when it's fully scaled up. Thermite Bore or Railgun. I'd give this one to the Railgun since the Thermite Bore doesn't get a whole lot of advantage with Survivalist. Zweihander or the Frostfang, I'd give this one to the Frostfang. Both of them are melee weapons, but you get a gun with this one and it can freeze enemies, and you can deal even more damage if they're frozen. Bastion or the M16, I'd give this one to the M16 thanks to its flexibility, but the Bastion's shield is a nice addition to Survivalist, so if you want to be even tankier, you can take that. I guess the Bonebreaker just wins here because for whatever reason it got put on here twice. Okay. Don't know why. Wait, didn't we already have the AR-15? Did it just start copying like other ones that it already put on here? I think we had this one too. Did we have the gravity imploder? I'm pretty sure we've had the gravity imploder too. I'm not sure why some of these are doubled the way they are. Maybe it just filled every slot that it could and just took what it could. Because I know there was 128 slots in total and 93 weapons in total. So the Glock 18 or the crossbow, I'm more inclined to go with the crossbow here. I think it works better for you against most enemies. You do get faster reloads with it, and you essentially have infinite ammo with it, which is pretty nice. The AA-12 or the centerfire, another really hard matchup. Both these weapons do very well on Survivalist. You get more flexibility with the centerfire. Both these weapons actually work really good in combination. I've used both of these a lot. Centerfire does more damage per shot than the AA-12 will, although the AA-12 has higher DPS. You also get a larger magazine with it, and you can reload all your shots at once with it, but it does way more. For this one, I think I'd give it to the AA-12 over the centerfire, but they are very close. Railgun or the Frostfang, I'd give this one to the Frostfang. You just get the bonus movement speed, the bonus block and parry, the bonus freezing, and it's just all around a really good weapon. M16 or the Bone Crusher. The Bone Crusher does have the highest blocking reduction out of any of the weapons in the game, so that's a bonus. You also get bonus movement speed with it. The M16 is a very flexible weapon. You can use both the assault rifle and the grenade launcher part against a lot of different enemies. I think for this one, I'm going to give it to the M16. Crossbow or the AA-12? I think I would rather go with the AA-12 as my only weapon. This crossbow is really good on Survivalist, especially early on, because it does so well against crowds and against large Zeds. But the AA-12 does really well against everything. Frostfang or the M16? I would go with the Frostfang here. Again, you get even more options with the Frostfang than you do with the M16, but the M16 does give you a lot of options, and it's a pretty good weapon on Survivalist. Alright, the AA-12 or the Frostfang? I would go with the Frostfang here. Again, you get more mobility with it, you get more utility out of it than the AA-12, even though the AA-12 will do more damage per second and do generally better against crowds. Maybe about the same against large enemies. And then in our final matchup, we have the Kaboom Stick and the Frostfang. The Kaboom Stick will do more damage than the Frostfang. The Frostfang gives you more utility because you can use it as a melee weapon. You can block and parry with it. You can also freeze enemies with it, and you do get bonus movement speed with it, which is a pretty big deal for having a gun that gives you bonus movement speed. So for this one, both these weapons I really like, and both of them I take very often with Survivalist. I think I'm going to give it to the Frostfang, though, over the Kaboom Stick, but just barely. I think I'm more inclined to take the Kaboom Stick than the Frostfang, but the Frostfang I would say is a little bit better. So, that's my list of all the Survivalist weapons. I hope I got all of them, although multiple of them showed up here for some reason. The bottom half of this right side is just repeats for whatever reason. So that'll do it with Survivalist weapons. We will be doing all these weapons again as off-perk weapons, and probably briefly explaining them like I did in this video, and we'll be doing them one more time again, with them just competing against one another as weapons. So, not factoring in any perk, not factoring in any ability, just the weapons by themselves. Those should be fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this list. Thank you guys so very much for watching it. I know this video was kind of longer than the other ones. If you guys did like that and you're not subscribed, be sure that you get subscribed. That way you get notifications whenever I put any of these videos out like this. This is a lot of fun to do. Special thanks to all of my supporters over here on the channel. These are all the supporters from Patreon and from the YouTube membership program. If you would like to be a part of that, there is links down in the description below. You also get access to early videos, and you get access to certain things like badges and all of these little emotes around me right now. Thank you guys so very much for that. I really do appreciate it, and I will talk to all of you guys next time. Till then, stay cool, and bye!